So I did a video earlier that talked about normal trajectory of brain development. Now, what I want to talk about is what we may see in a kiddo that may not be on that ideal trajectory of brain development. We may start seeing some gaps or some inefficiencies in the way that they are moving through this trajectory of brain development. Okay, so just a little refresher on how that typical trajectory of brain development is that we know that when babies are born, they don't have fully developed brains, right? They process their world primarily through primitive reflexes, which are these survival reflexes. Then we start to become more efficient in the way that we process our world. And we start to process our world primarily through movement touch. And then we start to process, as the brain develops and continues to develop, we start to primarily process our world through auditory verbal, or that's our primary way of processing our world. And then our gift as humans is this ability to have visual cognition, that mind's eye, that whole brain functioning. Okay, so that's what an ideal trajectory of brain development. So what I want to talk about is just like is a scenario that we may see if they're just not there yet in development, and we start to increase the demand that is being put on their brain. So example I like to use is let's imagine we have a first grader. Okay, so we have this first grader that now enters into the classroom. And they are told, hey, Johnny, I need you to sit still. Hey, Johnny, watch what I'm doing. Hey, Johnny, look at what I'm doing, then write it back down. And if, say, Johnny is just not there yet in development, because when we look at that way of processing their world, so they enter first grade, they're meant to sit still, look and listen to what the teacher is saying. So they're doing a lot of processing through auditory verbal. But let's say Johnny's just not there yet. Johnny is not primarily processing his world through movement touch, and he may be more primarily processing his world through movement touch. Well, if we increase the demand on Johnny's brain primarily through auditory verbal, and Johnny primarily processes his world through movement touch, but now you have a kid that is primarily processing his world through movement touch, and you tell him, sit still, don't move, look at what I'm doing, write down what I'm writing down. These are higher functioning areas of brain development that Johnny just is not there yet in development, is not primarily processing his world in that world yet. And now we're starting to increase that demand. So what may we see in Johnny if we're increasing the demand on his brain in an area where he's not efficient yet, or he's not there yet in development? Well, we might start to see Johnny being hyper. Maybe Johnny has focus issues. Johnny is the one that is always interrupting the class. Johnny's that bad kid in the class. Johnny's the one that maybe can hold it together during the day, but he gets home and he has behavioral issues. And Johnny is classified as that bad kid. But really, that's a window into his brain that he's just not there yet. And we're putting too much demand on a brain that cannot process that world yet. And what then we see is these deflections in the way that he is primarily processing his world, which is movement touch. So which is why we see him, probably like tapping against the desk, or always tapping his foot, or always having to get up, or cannot focus on one thing for long enough because he does not have that ability yet. Again, key word is yet. He's just not there yet in development. But we have to understand that there's always a reason for behaviors. So when we better understand these behaviors, we can better understand what is going on in the brain, where they're at in development, so that then we can look at what we need to do to go forward and where we may need to focus on. So this can be a variety of things, too. So, if we maybe are having troubles with multitask things, you give them 3 things and they only do 1. Well, it's not that they didn't want to do the others. It just may be that they are not efficient with auditory verbal, or even actually a little bit more of visual cognition, and you just overwhelmed their brain. So they only remembered either the first thing or the last thing. It's not that they are defiant and they are refusing to do what you tell them. It's a window to their brain, okay? So that's where, obviously we know that their brain may not be there yet in development, and which is a thing that we may have to look into is what tools are they primarily processing their world, movement, touch, auditory, verbal. This is where we do exam in our office to really figure that stuff out. But we may have to also lower the demand on their brain and maybe only temporarily give them 1 task at a time so that they get it done. And then when they get that done, then we tell them another task. And this is just, a step along the way to help them get through that. If there's a deeper thing that we need to look at, we can definitely do that. But I always like to give these little tips and nuggets along this way too, to help you guys better understand your kids and what you can do as a parent, as an educator, to help lower the demand on their brain. Because if we are putting too much demand on a brain that is just not there yet, we're going to see deflections, or we're going to see behaviors, learning, socialization challenges. These are windows into their brain, and we need to start to look at that and understand that so that we can look at what we need to do. So I hope that helps. Reach out to us, post a comment, share this to someone that may need to hear this. We are here to help you guys and help your families live their best expression of life.